Today we're going to look at the world of picking hand technique. For me, that happens to be my right hand. And I'm going to give you some things which will make you a more relaxed bass player, give you access to more range of your instrument, and most importantly, help you avoid any injuries when it comes to practicing or performing. We're going to look at that technique on a 4-string bass, on a 5-string bass, and even on a 6-string. I think when you talk about any kind of technique with our instrument, you really have to first look at the playing position. Are you a seated player like me? Do you play with the bass on your left knee? I happen to be using a footstool to raise that knee, so when I practice, I don't necessarily need the strap to take any of the weight. Are you the classic sit-down right knee kind of person, to stand up and have that wrist hanging over the back of the bass? These are all questions you have to ask yourself. You have to identify who you are, what kind of player you are. Everyone is slightly different, but as soon as you do that, you can start to adjust the position of the bass a little bit, and you can start to add some of the tools I'm going to give you today to really improve your muting with the picking hand. I like to have the neck of the bass slightly raised as I play, mainly seated with the instrument on my left leg, and that gives me the option to really straighten out my picking hand wrist. I think that's one of the most important things to avoid injury, to avoid stress, and to be able to practice and play and enjoy the process way longer. So you all know that classic thing on the picking hand side with the bass over on that side of your body, the wrist draped over the body of the bass. And there we are, grooving for hours and hours on gigs. Maybe you practice that way. And if you do have that technique, I highly encourage you to try and slowly over time, this won't happen overnight, but I really encourage you to try and change that and try and straighten out the wrist a little bit, so you're not putting this unnecessary strain by having a right angle when you play. Now, by putting the bass up on my left knee, by having this slightly elevated neck position, you can see that my wrist is able to be completely straight no matter how I play. And yes, I have to raise it slightly when I come over here to play the lower string, the E string on this 4-string. But the amount of relaxation I'm able to have with the picking hand wrist being totally straight far outweighs any extra minor stress you might incur by only sometimes having to raise your elbow slightly to maintain that position. And then come down into that palm muting, that you see how completely straight that is. You know, if you're more of a level neck player, the arm is actually going to start to be more parallel. The fingers are going to be more parallel with the string. So it's all about finding that balance point. Mine happens to be here, like I said, with the raised neck. I'm able to play palm muted. I'm able to mute the entire instrument with my palm there resting on all 4 strings, and then close that up, use my thumb to strike, use my fingers to pick up, and I can use multiple fingers on the picking hand, and it's very muted, it's very controlled, and it's incredibly relaxed. I can play like this and feel no strain for hours and hours on end. So now let's look at a few more conventional, more open sounding playing positions with the picking hand. I tend to, when I'm playing a 4-string bass, anchor my thumb somewhere on a pickup when I have to get down and play the bottom string. But as soon as I get off that bottom string, the anchor point becomes the string below the one I'm playing. Let's break that down. Let's use an exercise, the very first exercise from my book, From Practice to Performance. This is available below in the description of the video if you want to dig deeper into any of the things we talk about technique-wise in this video. Tons of exercises in here. This is one I use as a warm-up all the time. It's a chromatic approach to a major arpeggio. It's a chromatic approach from below as you ascend, and then from above as you descend. Now, Any of you that weren't paying attention to the notes and were paying attention to my picking hand will notice that, as I said, once I get off that E string and I stop anchoring my thumb on the pickup, when I get to literally the second note of the exercise, I switch. I switch from the pickup to the E string. And then I maintain that shape, that string spacing the entire rest of the time I'm not playing the lowest string on the instrument. Now, as soon as I get up to this D sharp there, our first chromatic approach note, my thumb jumps from the pickup to the E string. Now, this position is what I maintain across the entire instrument, and just every time I'm not playing the E string, it's always thumb on the string below the one I'm playing. I'm always muting that one. So let's break down the exercise. We jump. Now I'm going to jump to the A string with the thumb because I have to go up to the D string to play. And as you can see, as I get to that A string, my thumb rolls back, and now I'm muting the bottom two strings of the instrument, the E and the A string, with just my thumb. There's no palm. I'm really not having to do much with my left hand. Just muting the bottom two strings with that part of my thumb. The side of the thumb is on the E string, and the thumb is now anchored more on the tip on the A string. And that same concept continues as I go up to the top string of the instrument. But now the rest of the thumb is starting to pull back across the strings. So I'm anchored on the D string with more of the tip of the thumb, and the side of the thumb is muting. If I try and pick with my left hand, you can hear they're totally dead. There's no ringing at all because their thumb is doing all the work with the right hand. I gotta say, this frees up the fretting hand so much and really allows me to do some pretty insane things technically with the left hand, where I don't have to burden the left hand with an equal share of the muting on the instrument. So just watch that thumb cruise across the strings from the pickup to the E string, to the A string, to the D string as I move up the exercise. Let's also try that with a linear idea with just a major scale. Here we'll use C major. We'll cross the entire fretboard up and down. And you'll see the same concept applies every single time there's that spacing of one string. The thumb is on the string below the one I'm playing, and if I'm playing the lowest string, it's on the pickup. And it's not just arpeggios and scales and linear ideas that I used it for. Whenever I'm playing with two fingers on my picking hand, I'm using that the entire time. It's a little more challenging, the more angular, the larger the intervals you're playing, but it's the same concept. I'm going to play another idea from my book, From Practice to Performance. These are triads based on the melodic minor scale. I'm here in F minor, and I'm playing triads, and I'm arpeggiating them, I'm splitting them up. Exactly the same concept with the right hand, with the muting, with the picking hand. It's always moving as a unit. Now let's take a quick look at the same concept with a 5-string, a little more real estate, obviously one more string, but the same concept applies. Now remember what I said about pickups being different shapes? These are nice and square on top for the thumb to anchor on. Feels much nicer on the tip of the thumb than a P-style pickup. Let's carry on from our melodic minor triads. Exactly the same exercise we just played on the 4-string. But exactly the same technique conceptually with the right hand with that thumb moving. Now, a lot of people call this a floating thumb. I've never understood that. I see a lot of people with the thumb in front and the fingers behind. I don't understand that at all. It's really not floating at all because it is so anchored every time it moves. It's floating in the sense that it's not stationary. I see a lot of people play the instrument where it's either stays on the pickup or it stays on the bottom string. I can't even do it. You see, I automatically move the thumb. I'm going to force myself to play an F major scale. But you hear that already? Leaving my thumb behind and not muting at all with that. You start to get those notes hanging on. Now, if I use my concept of moving that thumb and re-anchoring it every time, I can stop anywhere in the scale, there's nothing ringing on. Not a single note ringing on. That's just super effective picking hand muting. So for everyone out there who likes to play a little bit more on the melodic side, or perhaps, utilize some of the things a slightly extended range bass like this can give you, it's the hybrid between that moving thumb that re-anchors every time and the palm muting stuff we looked at on the 4-string back in the beginning of the video. It's the hybrid between those two things that gives me not only kind of ultimate control, but also that element of having a really relaxed picking hand and knowing that I can practice for an extended amount of time or play for an extended amount of time without risking injury. I've really never felt any stress in my picking hand simply because I've really been focused on it for so many years, implying basically just these two simple elements of technique. Let me make some examples of how I use that when I'm playing what I consider to be my music. And how I'm able to switch from that quite open, that chordal thing with the melody happening, to get all the way down to some very lower dynamic palm muted stuff, and then open up into chords. And combine melody and chord progressions and harmony and all these things. It's really facilitated and helped out by these two main concepts we've been talking about today. So although the 6-string isn't my main go-to instrument, I would be very remiss of me to leave all of you 6-string players out there. And again, the same concept applies. We can take it right from our melodic minor triads, arpeggiated triads. We could go to our I should turn the reverb off so you can see no matter where I stop, there's nothing happening, there's nothing ringing on, because look, I have that thumb, it's on the B string. Now I have this, a string I'm not going to play as much. It's a great anchor point, so I can get down and play. So I can use my E string. I really feel way more comfortable anchoring on a string than a pickup. So it is nice to have a string to anchor to when I'm playing down there on the E. But again, as you can see, the concept is exactly the same. When I'm playing just an arpeggio, for instance, you have to get up there a little quicker. The thumb is moving a little more rapidly because you're shifting strings a lot quicker. But anywhere I go, if I don't even use the left hand, for instance, in terms of muting, like I'm taking the left hand away to highlight how effective the thumb is being. Still the hand is there, but it's only on that last note that I hit. And the option to go and play open, to get all of our favorite harmonics and all the stuff that the bass has to offer, it's all right there when you really dial in the picking hand. To recap, please don't forget to consult yourself, your seated or standing, your playing position first. That's ultimately the most important thing, most important place to start from when considering any adjustments to your technique. This is not something that if you don't play this way, you will be able to change overnight. It's not something I suggest rushing into or playing for hours and hours and hours a day with a new playing style or a new technique. Introduce it slowly if this is something that interests you, if this is something you would like to be a part of your playing. Please try at all costs to avoid injury by forcing an issue. Always make sure you're listening to your body. And if you have played with your wrist over the edge of the body of the bass for so long and suddenly you're changing all the way over here and straightening it and playing with a different technique, please be aware your body is going to give you feedback immediately on the fact that A, it's pretty weird to make that big a leap in technique change, and B, your body is going to tell you that it really takes time to adjust. I highly recommend trying it. I think it's awesome to try new things. If you made it this far in the video, you're probably one of the candidates that are like, yeah, you know what, I am gonna try this and I am gonna see if it works for my playing. So just avoid injury, listen to your body, make sure you check in with that starting point, that playing position first, and good luck to you. Happy practicing. I appreciate you spending some of your very precious time with me, talking about music, learning about the bass. Of course, all of my books are available. They're linked below. I have physical copies, very limited amount of physical copies that I sign and ship out all across the world. You can get physical copies at Amazon worldwide, and of course the digital copies at my website, janekgwizdala.com/store. And I look forward to seeing you in the next video.